This is going to be a spoiler-free review. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I've made a review, and I figured what better way to get back into it than to try to make one about Madam Web.
No, God!
So this is going to be a review of the film Madam Web from Sony Marvel. So you already know what this film is going to be about just because a lot of people have already made reviews on this, lambasting it.
While it was so bizarrely interesting that I thought about putting it in the It's Okay tier on my personal scale, but the terrible villain, the cheesy ending, and the shameless empty promise of a superhero team that it doesn't deliver have me downgrading Madam Web to not a fan.
But every once in a while a film comes out where it gets so torn to shreds and it gets so panned by critics and audiences alike, where you think to yourself, oh, maybe this movie isn't that bad. Maybe there's something about it that could be of good quality or value, like maybe some of the acting is good, or maybe some of the cinematography is nice, or perhaps some of the editing will wow me. And boy, was I wowed by the editing, let me tell you.
Who is he? Ezekiel Sims. He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
And yes, I went to check this film out, and it is really not good. Wow, what a surprise. Who would have thought that Madam Web would be a piece of shit movie? So what is this film? Well, if you're one of the 10 people on this planet who don't already know about Madam Web, this is a film that's directed by S.J. Clarkson and written by Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. If you don't know who these guys are, you're going to know them real quick. They are the writers behind Dracula Untold, The Last Witch Hunter, Gods of Egypt, Power Rangers, Morbius, and Madam Web. Wow, what a resume that is. Resume of poopy. No, but in all seriousness, these guys have a really terrible track record, and I'm not sure how they keep getting work. But regardless, this film is about the titular character of Madam Web, played by Dakota Johnson, who in the comics is predominantly portrayed as being an old lady, despite the fact that Dakota Johnson is 34 years old, and is about her character trying to protect 3 young girls from this guy who has powers, who can see into the future, and is trying to kill them. Meanwhile, she gets powers of her own that allow her to see into the future in snippets at a time, and that's how she discovers that she has to protect these girls. So as far as the plot, that's it.
That's it?
So I'm not even entirely sure where to begin going about describing the absolute garbage heap that is this film, but I'm gonna do my best. We're gonna try. So let's start with the performances. Are any of the performances good?
No.
You can tell the entire time that Dakota Johnson is really bored being there and would rather be doing 50 Shades of Grey 4, 50 Shades Free Willy. No, but in all seriousness, she does not have any passion behind her performance at all, and the promotional marketing behind this film from Dakota Johnson specifically makes that very apparent in the many different things that she said. So yeah, it really didn't seem like Dakota Johnson could give 2 shits about being in this movie, which, I mean, I can't necessarily blame her. And then you've got Sydney Sweeney as Julia Cornwall, one of the 3 girls that she's trying to protect. She's doing something in this film that I can only describe as belonging more so in a porno than in this film. She's trying to play this nerdy, neurotic, filled with anxiety character, and it just comes across as really wooden and stilted. It feels like she's never read lines from a script before in her life, and honestly I feel kind of bad for her in this film because it feels like she's performing with someone pointing a gun to her head. You've got the other 2 girls, Isabella Merced and Celeste O'Connor, who play Anya Corazon and Maddie Franklin, and they're both very forgettable. Their performances are super one-note and wooden. There doesn't seem like any passion or experience behind either of their performances, and you're gonna forget about it as soon as the credits roll. And then you've got my boy Tahar Rahim as Ezekiel Sims, the villain of this movie. He is far and away the worst part of the film, and it's not entirely his fault, which is weird, so let me explain. Every single line and every single piece of dialogue from this character, from this actor, is ADR, which means that all the lines that he has in this film were recorded after they shot the footage of this movie. So every single thing he says is really stilted and really offbeat, and you can tell it's recorded in post and inserted into the film later on. It's one of the worst cases of ADR in a film I think I've ever seen, and I want to know what exactly happened to where they felt they needed to do that for this specific actor and character. Was every single piece of recording fucked up for him specifically? Like literally just him? Or did they feel that his voice in the recording was so bad and irredeemable that they felt they needed to record this garbage in order to put over it? There are scenes where he's working alongside another actor, and that other actor is doing fine, and you can see that she's recording her lines in the footage at the time of them filming, and then his lines are just still ADR'd for no reason. Ostensibly they should be recorded on the same audio, but apparently I guess Sony execs didn't like the cut of his jib. There's not much else to say about the acting. Adam Scott plays Ben Parker, and Emma Roberts plays Ben's sister-in-law, who is pregnant with Peter. It's not really that much of a spoiler, I guess, but that's something worth touching on, and their performances are really forgettable, very shoehorned in. You can tell that they're just there for a paycheck. Let's talk about the editing of this movie. This feels like someone threw the film reel in the air and then chopped it up with scissors as it was falling down, being pulled by gravity. This is some of the sloppiest, messiest editing in a big budget studio movie I think I've ever witnessed in a theater, which is saying a lot, especially after watching Bohemian Rhapsody.
Can I borrow it for Sunday church?
So this is Queen. And you must be Freddie Mercury. You've got a gift. You all have. So tell me, what makes Queen any different from all of the other wannabe rock stars I meet?
I'll tell you what it is.
I'm not entirely sure if they used the Taken 3 method of just chopping the shit up out of this movie and hoping that nobody notices and gets confused and gets caught up in the mess of things happening, going, oh yeah, I'm watching something exciting happen. I guess this is cool. There's a lot of camera movements that are really wonky. They try to do this thing where they flip the camera upside down when a character gets thrown, and it just looks like a messier, piss-poor version of Upgrade, a much better film than this with really stellar camera work. It's like they're trying to be stylistic in that way, but they don't necessarily know how to do it, so it just feels really offbeat and messy. And then towards the end, especially when they're running away from the bad guy, there is some atrocious slow frame rate slow-mo moments and like really stilted, jarring frames in this movie that don't line up with anything going on whatsoever. Yeah, my cat is up in arms about this movie too. That's why she's yelling a lot. So if you hear her, that's why. The plot of this film doesn't really make much sense at all. So Dakota Johnson has to protect these girls from Ezekiel Sims because he wants to kill them because he sees his death in his future and they're all involved in it. What's really crazy about this is this movie is being promoted and marketed as, oh, it's gonna be like 4 Spider Women. It's gonna have these 4 characters teaming up to fight against this guy, and you're gonna get to see them in the costumes using powers, and it's gonna be awesome. You're gonna get to see all these characters fully fleshed out and in action. Isn't that gonna be cool? And then you watch the movie, and the only time you ever see them in costume like that are either visions of the future that Ezekiel Sims has of his own demise, or like towards the end of the film when Dakota Johnson is reflecting back or reflecting forward on their futures, I should say. Oh, that's so Raven. And she sees them all with their powers and their costumes fully in action, which you never really see in the main timeline of this film. It is always just them running away from the bad guy, which isn't exactly the most exciting piece of action you can watch in a film. I mean, there's not much else I can say about this film specifically that hasn't already been said to death from other film reviewers, so I'm going to touch on more so this film's involvement with the Sony Marvel universe that they've been trying to build for the past 5 years. There's a fun theory that I read online that I like to think about in terms of these movies, where they said it seems like Sony is purposefully trying their best to purposefully make shitty movies in order to bring the MCU down, which I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea, but I think it's fun to think about nonetheless, because in regards to these movies, I seriously don't understand, especially with Madam Web, how anyone was able to look at this film on the cutting room floor and say, yep, this is good, we should release this, let's do it, let's put it out to the public and fucking embarrass ourselves even more. I think this success of Venom really tricked Sony execs into thinking that they don't really have to try that hard in order to maintain an audience when it comes to viewing their shitty superhero movies. At the very least with Venom, him as a character is popular enough that people are going to see the movie regardless of quality. And they had the fortunate outcome of the first Venom movie not being absolute garbage. And then they make films like Morbius and Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter, where not many people are going to know who those characters are. They're just pulling from the properties that they have ownership of in order to create buzz around the fact that people are going to confuse these films with the MCU. People that are a part of the general audience aren't really going to think about the studio politics and the copyright issues and the ownership rights of certain Marvel characters in order to discern that these movies are in fact not a part of the MCU. There are plenty of people that are casual moviegoers that I've personally encountered that fully believe that movies like Venom or Morbius or Madam Web are indeed part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe set up by Disney. And I think Sony fully knows this fact, and I think they're trying to use it to their advantage as much as they can. This is like when Pixar makes a film like Up, and then some shitty animation studio tries to make a sort of weird clone of it called What's Up, and they try to sell it in stores in order to confuse grandmas into buying it for their grandchildren. This is essentially the bigger scale version of that, and I think more and more people are sort of starting to recognize that this is the case. This movie did so poorly that it's starting to make Sony rethink their entire strategy and their entire future when it comes to their franchise. You know, even though Madam Web can see into the future, Sony sure fucking can't. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what the likes of Kraven the Hunter has in store for us. One thing's for sure is I'm craving it. So yeah, Madam Web. This is a 1 out of 10. Absolute trash. This movie makes me want to go into the Amazon researching spiders before I died. Thank you guys for checking this review out. I appreciate it so much if you clicked on the video. I'm going to try my best to make more review content consistently on this channel. I know that that's the content you guys engage with the most, but I'm hoping that with that, you'll also stick around for our podcast episodes because I really like doing those and I think that they're a lot of fun and we get some cool conversations out of it. So until next time, I'll see you guys in the future later. Bye-bye.